Unspoken Issues.
How's it going, legions of the Unspoken? It's Dean Compton right here on Unspoken Issues for the Unspoken Decade. And I tell you what, it's been a long time since I graced these here airwaves with my voice. It's been a busy time for everybody. It's been a very dangerous time for everybody. Hope everybody's been, very safe. Everybody's having a great time. Looks like we might just be to the other end of this, which is appropriate because today we're going to be talking about Transformers number 80, which we actually brought up on Unspoken Issues all the way back pre-COVID, October night of 2019. Of course, you chose this in one of our polls. It went up against G.I. Joe 155, and y'all chose it. Jesse Starcher is with me today. He's, driving this bad boy because he does such a great job so regularly with these Unspoken Issues. I don't get to dive in as much as I'd like to. So, Jesse, with me today here, you're going to be driving this thing, driving it home, which is appropriate because, so many of these Transformers are, vehicles. They're literally fucking called Autobots.
Yes,
right?
indeed.
So automobiles. So they do a little bit of driving. And, yeah, this is old. We should have had this done a long time ago.
Hey, man, look, it's just good to talk to you again. We have been able to at least keep ourselves busy doing polls all the way through 2020 and going into 2021. We're not forgetting about these polls that we did. We know all about them. We're going to get to them at some point. And I remember when we first pitched this, and we knew who the result, what the results were, which, by the way, the final issue of Transformers won over the final issue of G.I. Joe, 52% of the vote, one of the closest polls I think we've ever had. I remember reading that issue, and I was just like, well, I'll get right through it. I'd never had read the Transformers series as dedicated as some people that I know. So
yeah, it's complicated shit. Like once you get way up there, for me, I wanted to ask you, what's your experience with the Transformers? Like for me, Transformers are incredibly integral. Like growing up, I was born in 79. They hit the shelves in 84, the cartoons on. I actually had like issues 4 and 5. Scared the hell out of me as a kid because like Shockwave kills all the fucking Autobots and shit. Stuff that never happened on the cartoon. Like my dad had to comfort me and stuff. So like, what's your experience with the Transformers? Because whatever it was, it probably couldn't be close to the cosmic mystical. I want to say mumbo jumbo, but I don't mean that pejoratively. But like it's in a mystical cosmic way that like Transformers probably never was for you, unless, as you said, you rode this train to the end, the Astro train to the end.
Yes, sir, the Astro train.
Astro train, baby.
So. I was a G.I. Joe guy. I watched G.I. Joe faithfully. Transformers was on, and I actually recall watching quite a bit of that. I went and saw the movie in the theater.
Oh, damn!
Yeah.
I didn't see it in the theater. My parents wouldn't take me.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I remember when it released, I had the option to go watch Transformers or Howard the Duck. All right, and if you look it up, both of those were in theaters at the same time.
Right.
And
the real Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, exactly. So my aunt takes me to the theater, and I said, "Let me go watch It's probably like the first time I ever went to watch a movie by myself, and so I could have only been like 8 years old.
Probably the first time you got to pick a movie.
Yeah, I mean, 8 years old going into a theater by myself. I remember, doesn't one of the Autobots like say "damn" or somebody says "damn"? Like it was like one of the first times I ever heard a cartoon cuss.
Yeah, I think it's "cup."
Okay, all right.
But I can't remember for sure. But yeah, there was definitely a 4-letter word in that bad boy.
Yeah.
This wasn't your daddy's Transformers because it literally couldn't have been. They didn't exist for your dad.
Yeah.
But, or they were because they couldn't have been any other Transformers, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, man, you got to see it. What else happened? I guess your mind got blown the same way.
Yeah, I enjoyed
Optimus Prime got blown away.
I couldn't believe it, man. Talking about Transformers, the movie, had me wanting to listen to that soundtrack again and reminded me to drop in real quick to plug one of our sponsors for the show, and that's Amazon Music. If you head to getamazonmusic.com/W2M Network, you can get a free 30-day trial where you can check out over 70 million songs, including Stan Bush's The Touch, Lion's rendition of the Transformers theme, and my favorite, Spectre General's Nothing's Gonna Stand in Our Way. That's getamazonmusic.com/W2M Network for that free 30-day trial. So the cartoon is about as far as I went. I think I may have owned one Transformer. When it comes to the toy line, I was one of the guys that was like, there's no way I could talk my mom into spending that much money on a figure. They were expensive. So I stuck with G.I. Joes. Now, as far as comics go, I think I own one Transformers comic. I couldn't even tell you what happened in it. I'm familiar with the universe. I know all the big characters. So we're talking Optimus Prime, Megatron, all that. I'm familiar with the characters. So I don't know what point it had to have been like the late 80s where my knowledge of the Transformers just completely came to an abrupt halt. Yeah. Because looking at the cover of Transformers 80, I'm like, what the hell is going on here? We have a samurai cutting out some stuff, and I'm like, where's the Transformers at?
I think part of the thing is you're like, somewhere in the late 80s, your knowledge of the Transformers came to an abrupt halt. That would be appropriate because unlike G.I. Joe, which I think, I can't say for where you were, but where I was, whether I was at a Walmart or one of the two fucking times a year I got to go to Toys R Us in Little Rock or whatever, G.I. Joe still had significant shelf space, a significant shelf presence, really all the way until the line ended. It was still getting maybe 3 pegboards, across or whatever. I just use my hands like no anybody can see this. But like, about 3 G.I. Joes across, even in its like most dying days. The Transformers, 2 things, as far as their toy line goes. Number one, they just did not command that shelf space as time went on, although with the headmasters and stuff, Fortress Maximus was huge and that kind of thing. G.I. Joe had the advantage of like they were all pretty much one size. There were the smaller Transformers, medium Transformers, the big ones, and then like the biggest ones, which I think hurt it as far as maintaining shelf space as sales waned. Like it was easy to just, if you were doing a planogram, to just plug the G.I. Joes in. This is conjecture too. I was not in charge of any toy departments in 1989, but like based on what I understand of the toy business and what I understand of retail in general, it'd be easier to just planogram that in. They're all pretty much the same size. You can jam it in here. Transformers wouldn't work as well. And then number 2, as the Transformers line went on, it literally got smaller. Like the last couple of years that like it had toys out, it had like Action Masters out, which were fairly decent size, probably about He-Man size, but they didn't transform. But the actual transforming ones were like Micro Masters and Action Masters, and they came in like sets of 5, and they were like Micro Machine size. Because I think Transformers, Hasbro at that time thought that the competition was Micro Machine. It wasn't G.I. Joe or something with the mythology. So yeah, there's good reasons why that would go on. I mean, this comic book came out in 91, and at that point, there had been no new Transformers on U.S. shelves in like a year. So yeah, I think that it makes sense. It's like I didn't know anything, as far as the Transformers are going, because it got harder and harder, certainly stateside, to know. In the UK, it was a little easier. They maintained more of a presence for whatever reason. Simon Furman, who wrote this, could probably tell you about it. Part of it because he was writing their weeklies. But here in the States, if you're trying to follow the Transformers after, like, say the movie really 86, 87 is really, really hard. Yeah, at least for a kid. If you're an adult, you do whatever the fuck you wanted.
For me, I'm just dropped into this world. Like, I know where the beginnings were, but I have no idea where we're at now. I had to do a little bit of research, learned a lot.
It's like part 4 of like the story.
Yeah.
Before we get to that, though, let's talk about the engine on the cover. Because the cover has like number 80 of a 4-issue limited series. When this started, it was only supposed to be a 4-issue limited series.
That's right. Yes.
And so sales were great. Obviously, sales were fucking great. It's 1984. Transformers are it is a great concept. Kids love it. And it's going play. The toys are hot. The cartoon's about to drop. So sales are, I think by the time number 4 hit, this cartoon had been on for like a month. So yeah, sales were great. So they were like, okay, we're going to keep this going. So but unlike they would do now, or what they would even do like 5 years, 10 years later, easily 10 years later, probably 5 years later, they would have started a new volume. You know what I mean? Like, they were like, okay, that was the mini, here's Transformers ongoing, like they did with Cable or West Coast Avengers and shit. In this case, they just kept the numbering, and then since this was the last issue, they did that brilliant callback. So you're in for a fun time immediately, and you also know that things are going to be fucked the fuck up off filter because it says number 80 in a 4-issue limited series. So to be fair, Jesse, you should have known what you were in for.
Yeah, no kidding. The title of this is End of the Road, published by Marvel, just like you said, cover date July of 91, hit the shelves May 28th of 91. $1 cover price, when comics cost $1. My
That
goodness.
was an increase, too. It probably was 75 cents the month before.
Yeah. Writer, just like you mentioned, Simon Furman. You probably know him from also seeing his name on G.I. Joe European Missions, Brute Force, RoboCop, Alpha Flight, penciled by Andrew Wildman, also G.I. Joe A Real American Hero. You know, you can see him on there, along with X-Men Adventures, Spider-Man 2099. You'll probably see Andrew's name. Inked by Stephen Baskerville, lettered by Rick L. Parker, colored by Nelson Yomtov. Real quick down and dirty, give our audience an idea who the Autobots are, the Decepticons are, and Cybertron, and then we'll kind of talk about some of the key characters that happen in this. I'll throw it to you. Autobots and Decepticons. Tell them all about it.
There's a planet Cybertron, and somewhere in their past, there's a big schism, and there's a big war. A guy, Megatron, who was like a gladiator, he had been treated poorly by the society that had existed. He rises up as a leader of people who, I say people, but they're robot beings that transform from one thing into another. And he winds up in charge of the Decepticons, the more unscrupulous bunch, but they would feel that they have to do what they have to do because politically, societally, financially, they've been mistreated for their whole existence. Optimus Prime is a pacifist. He loved those guys, but when they went too far, he and Megatron had a falling out. He was rebuilt by, I think, Alpha Trion into Optimus Prime. I can't remember his name before he was Optimus Prime, but he was like a weakling pacifist. Megatron, punch him anytime he wanted. Megatron, I said Megatron like a dumbass. Right, like, yeah, you fake fan. but anyhow, he gets booted up, refurbished, redone, and he winds up with the philosophy that people and beings that are strong should protect the beings that are weak, and that we should set things up to be as democratic as possible. He becomes Optimus Prime, and he leads the Autobots. And that's it, more or less, down and dirty. We're going to get a little bit more into the mysticism and their mythology as we go along in this issue, but that's more or less it. At some point, they crash on Earth millions and millions of years ago. I believe the Autobots are trying to get away from the Decepticons, because the war's just gotten bad. They need to get away. They need to regroup. So Decepticons follow them. They crash on Earth. They stay in stasis for millions of years. Then they wake up and the war resumes on Earth now. And eventually, it trickles back to Cybertron as well, where the war has never really stopped there either. But by God, at the end of this issue, number 80 in a 4-issue limited series, we're getting it done. The war will be over.
That's right.
That's more or less it. When you say, Jesse, you can put a cherry on that sundae if you got one.
Well, no, I mean, you covered everything. The main thing I wanted the people to understand was that, where the main sides are coming from and the planet they originated from, Cybertron. So right now, in issue 80, as we start issue 80, Cybertron is believed to be a dying planet. Yes. I think it's been attacked by Unicron, which is this huge being that
Galactus for toys.
Yeah. So he comes around, and the battle continued to be waged by the Decepticons and Autobots while this is still going on. As the Decepticons head to the planet Clo, Autobots Grimlock, Prowl, and a few others have followed them there, but did not realize that they were being led into an ambush. So that's kind of what comes before. Now, there's some characters that pop up throughout this 80th issue that me personally, like I said, I didn't know who they were, so I had to do a little bit of research. There's some people called the Neonites. All right. So the Neonites, I think I grabbed this from the MarvelFandom.com wiki. Creators Simon Furman and Andrew Wildman, they created these guys. They're a group of superpowered beings gathered by industrialists G.B. Blackrock in order to combat the menace of the evil Transformers on Earth, primarily the Decepticons. So that's who the Neonites are. They are actually people.
Blackrock goes all the way back to the early issues of the Transformers. Like the Decepticons, tear up his oil rigs early on. He's been a supporting guy the entire run.
Okay. I think there's 3 of them here in the book. And then we have Haikyuu.
I'm looking it up because I want to get it right, but Haikyuu comes in with the headmaster stuff.
That's
I believe he's from a planet called Nebulos. He is a Power Master. Do you know what a headmaster is in Transformers, or Target Masters?
Yeah. I actually I did some research on that. He's
from Nebulos, and he was the good guy there. There's a dude named Lord Zarin or Zarek. I can't remember off the top of my head. He wound up forming with Scorponok, who I believe is mentioned in this issue, although he doesn't appear because he's dead right now. He'll get better later, but he's dead right now. And then comic books, folks, that's it, right? Like, he's dead right now. He's better in a little bit. But Haikyuu comes from that planet. They invented technology so that they could do the headmasters. Like, they could transform into the head of a transformer. And then they get different benefits. He is the Power Master engine for Optimus Prime, which is funny because I was thinking about buying that toy in the last few weeks. It came out in, I believe, 88 or 89, and he would transform into the engine. And then that way you could actually transform. So it's like you got two different Transformers. Haikyuu's not a human, although like he basically is, because the human, the Nebulans that are humans. They are basically just like us. They breathe oxygen and all that stuff. He and Optimus Prime are combined, and not combined, but like when you do that process, you wind up interlinked in a way to where, like, if he gets hurt, the other one will get hurt, and you need him to transform and that kind of thing.
During this, this battle that's going on in Unicron, the Neonites are able to distract Unicron long enough for Optimus to plunge into Unicron with the Matrix. So at this point, previous to this issue, Optimus Prime is alive, but he plunges into Unicron with the Matrix, destroying both of them. But luckily, Haikyuu is able to escape, and he joins the Neonites at that time. And he's now convinced, though, that he's Optimus Prime. I don't know why. I have no idea, but he comes back, and apparently, according to the wiki here, Haikyuu believes he's Optimus, even though Optimus died.
Because they would be so interlinked. That's the thing. Like, when you become like the head, when he becomes his engine, like, he is the engine. So when Optimus Prime is thinking, like, he's also in there thinking, they become almost one being together. So I can't remember the particulars, but that makes sense if two people share like a traumatic event and one lives. Like, even in our world, sometimes that person decides they're the other one. Yeah. So and that's without being like interlinked through like space fucking robot circuits. Yeah. So I can totally see somebody linked with space fucking robot circuits that like died when somebody used the creation matrix on Toy Galactus.
Yeah,
like when they got away, that was an event they survived. They might think they were someone else.
That's a good point.
The other person. So I think that's what it was. Again, it's been a long time since I read the prior issues, but that's how I remember it. If that's not how it was, internet, set me straight.
Yeah. Come on, let us know.
Yeah. So let us know in the comments.
Next character is the one that appears on the cover and the one that had me going, what is going on here? This is Bludgeon. So do you know much about Bludgeon?
Bludgeon rules, man.
This guy, he's a pretender, and I forgot about this line of Transformers.
Yeah, easy to do.
Had no idea that they have this shell that apparently makes them appear humanoid if they need to be, or as in Bludgeon's case, he's like a spectral samurai of some sorts. Anyway,
that's a useful thing to pretend to be. There's so many places where you're like, oh shit, if I don't pretend to be a skeletal samurai, I'll never get around surreptitiously. I'll stick out.
91.
That was always my thing with the pretenders. Like, the Autobot ones made sense, even though they look fucking goofy. Like, Jazz's looks goofy, and Bumblebee's looks goofy, and Grimlock's looks goofy, but, like, they're people. So, like, yeah, they look like goofy space people, but I get it. But, like, you've got, like you say, Bludgeon's a spectral samurai, and, like, Longtooth, who's not in this issue, he's like a big walrus that has, like, a cyborg eye patch. And, like, Octopunch, who is in this issue, is like an octopus with a deep sea diver helmet. Where the fuck are they trying to blend in? What are they pretending to be? Like, I don't, like, what's the point?
Exactly. So I learned a lot about Bludgeon here, did a little bit of research for that. So we've talked about the cover of this thing. Are you ready I'll dive into the story here, my synopsis, do my best bet. You hop in whenever you want. You ready?
Sounds good, man. Sounds good.
Here we go. All right, so we open on the planet Klo with the Autobot Getaway just straight up getting shot and destroyed.
Who I thought was Cup when I first saw it.
Oh, really? Yeah. It's Getaway.
Right. I learned that when I turned the page. He looks just like Cup to me when I first saw it. I was like, whoa.
And I mean, it's like no quarter right here, man. It's right at the beginning. Somebody's getting killed. Is it Dreadwind and Darkwing? Okay. All right. So they're the ones that commit the Autobot murder here, and we're dropped pretty much in at the end of a skirmish where most of the Autobots have been killed, save for a few, including Grimlock and Prowl, that escaped. But there are a band of Decepticons on their tail, and that's Weird Wolf, Octopunch, Quake, and Fangry. Okay.
Octopunch rules. I remember one of the other Autobots that's there is Blaster.
Okay.
And another dude who looks like Cup. I don't know that it is Cup, but he looks like Getaway or Cup. It's I couldn't make it out, but Blaster's definitely one of those Autobots as well.
Which one? Okay, so I know later one of them is going to get killed. That's in their band because they are just sitting there talking, and then all of a sudden, again, another Autobot gets killed. Is it the Cup-looking one, or which one?
Yeah, I think it's the Cup-looking one that gets blasted. So, the others seem to all make it.
So Cups are or these are the red shirts of the Autobots.
That's exactly what I thought. Here comes the red shirt Cup-looking guy. Just blast that guy. But yeah, Blaster, Grimlock, and Prowl. And there's one other dude who I could never make out. I don't think I couldn't quite see who he was.
Meanwhile, the Neonites, Thunder Punch, Dynamo, and Rapture show up attacking Bludgeon when out of the sky, surprisingly, drops a resurrected Optimus Prime alongside a giant Transformer. We don't know who that is yet, but we're about to find out. He explains that his friend is known as the last Autobot, or the Ultimate Warrior, apparently as
shaking the ropes, the face paint on. As I look to the Cybertronian moons, I will understand that there must be a Decepticon victory.
Oh, that was spectacular. So yes, the Ultimate Warrior apparently is what he goes by according to the Decepticons. But he explains he's the final guardian of Cybertron. The last Autobot is also a repository for some of Primus's power. Primus being the creator of Cybertron.
He's like the Transformer god, basically. Yeah. Like everything that I think one of the things where there's like until all are one, they're all trying to become one with Primus again. Not necessarily dead, but if they can ever reunify their race, they'll have that wisdom and peace that he has.
Okay. So the last Autobot explains he was in the middle of Cybertron, awakened by a being who he said had two souls. This being was High Q, and when the last Autobot recognized the two noble souls, he fashioned a new body that could hold both souls and thus recreated Optimus Prime. Now, the last Autobot has come to Clo to end the war between Autobots and Decepticons. Bludgeon is outraged and attacks. He also has his band of Decepticons attack Optimus. As Optimus begins to fight back, Prowl and the rest of the Autobots show up to help him. During the fray, the last Autobot...
all four of them. Here we come.
Yeah, here we go.
Here we go. We're doing this.
Did they know Optimus Prime? Again, we're just reading one issue, so apologies. But I go into this and I'm like, Optimus Prime is resurrected. Now, the only thing that I had to remind me, or excuse me, at least let me know that Optimus Prime was dead, was the movie. So I thought he'd been dead. I thought he'd been dead this whole time.
Like 3 or 4 times in the comic.
Okay. All right. So that makes a little bit more sense. But anyway, the Autobots come around the corner to help Optimus, and I was like, I figured they would be like, holy crap, Optimus is still alive. But no, they're like guns a-blazing. Let's get these guys off Optimus.
I think it's the third time they've probably seen him be resurrected. They're like, yeah, good, Optimus is back. Also, Grimlock's one of them. He had been dead and gotten better. And maybe Prowl too. I can't say for sure about Prowl, but Blaster was once also at least semi-deactivated because he got killed by a circuit breaker, I want to say, when they first came to Earth in the 20s. So maybe they just wanted to be oh, good, yeah, that happens, man. I remember when I was dead. So, of course, the other guy is one of the other Dinobots. It's, I think it's Slag, but I can't remember for sure. But it's definitely one of the other Dinobots that just hit me.
All of a sudden, we got this fight going on, and the last Autobot starts resurrecting the other Autobots that were killed earlier in the issue. So I guess that's
the only time in pop culture history, right, where oh, good, the fucking zombies are here. Now the day's safe. When do you ever say that? When do you ever say oh, good, he's going to raise this army of the robot undead and finally beat the bad guys? So kudos to Simon Furman for, doing something that had never fucking been done before.
That's right.
Rob fucking O.
So seeing this, Bludgeon is like, okay, I'm done. It seems like he's like, we'll attack some other day. I think that's his plan at some point.
Well, yeah, exactly. He has some weird, that Metallicado thing, he believes in this Transformer martial art known as Metallicado. And, there's a Bushido element to it. There's an honor element to it, much like a samurai code. And they had been beaten that day. They had been beaten soundly. And so he has to withdraw according to his code. And like he says, we'll attack some other day, which is also fine according to his code. So, yeah, the whole thing is there's going to be peace, at least. It doesn't even seem like it's just going to be peace for now. It seems like for some time.
Okay.
Like he's gonna be licking those wounds a long time.
Yeah. So they leave. They're out of there. The Bludgeon and the Decepticons leave.
Bludgeon.
Yep. The Autobots enjoy their victory. Now Prowl mentions, he wonders aloud. He's like, where can the Autobots call their home? He believes Cybertron's been destroyed, and Optimus Prime lets him in on a little something and tells him, hey, Cybertron hasn't been destroyed. It's been reborn, and they can finally go home. So
we can rebuild it. We have the technology.
Yes, Steve Austin. Well, man, I mean, and that's the end. We see Cybertron.
It's like just one big neat citizen saying, oh, yeah, Cybertron's back. We could go there. We'll take the humans home, and then we'll go home. How about that? The end, bye. It's weird because from what I understand, this is funny. From what I understand, they were only it was supposed to be canceled after like 75. Like 75 was supposed to be it. But then, like, they gave him a few more issues. And if this isn't true, this is what I've read. If this isn't true, please, somebody, especially if, like, Simon Furman or the editor himself or somebody can get on, somehow hears this and it's like, you are full of shit, Dean Compton. Let me know I'm full of shit. That's absolutely fine. Excuse me. But from what I understand, it's supposed to be canceled then, and they got a few more issues. And it seems like, and this part's conjecture. That I do believe is fact. If it's not, let me know. But, like, conjecture, it seems like they got the extra space, and then they kind of incorrectly estimated how much extra space there was. Like, it seems like they thought that, and maybe they did think they were getting like 3 more pages. You know what I mean? Like, since it was going to be the last issue, it's not uncommon for the final issue of a comic book to, hey, we'll run 2 fewer ads. We weren't making any fucking money from this anyway. That's why it's getting canceled. We could not make any fucking money this issue, So we're wrapping it up, and it seems like he thought he'd get like 3 more pages because, wow, rarely do you see an entire run, a series summed up in it's like 4 sentences. Like,
I know,
it.
Dude.
And it's not badly done. I'm also not saying that it was shitty. Like, actually, I'm like, oh, well, you did put a bow on that one. It took every scrap of string you got, but that is a bow.
Yeah, you talk about writing happy endings. This is where I think they probably would have reached at some point. Optimus Prime is back. Cybertron is out there, and also all the dead Autobots you just watched get murdered. They're okay.
They're back.
It's all right. So it's about as perfect as a happy ending as you can get. But yeah, it did feel rushed in my opinion. I mean, I was just like, okay. I mean, granted, I didn't have the gravitas of what came before, but it did seem to, Optimus Prime is back. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go to Cybertron. Everything's great. And it's the end.
Like I said, it seems like they thought they would get like another page or 2. Because it almost seems like they would drop the humans off and then they would go. It even feels like you should have gotten another panel of Bludgeon and the Decepticon. Like not doing anything, but just wherever they were at, like, where are we going, Bludgeon? He's like, we'll know when we get there. Or like he points at a planet, like, here's fine. It almost seems like you would have gotten that too, because that also seemed a smidge rushed. Again, I could be wrong, but it just seems like they expected another page or 2.
Did they pick up the series with any other company at any point? Or
yeah, it's actually it got picked up. With Dreamwave, there is a title called Generation 1, but I don't think it picks up neatly. I think it's supposed to take place in the same continuity, but I believe it's been disavowed now. But at IDW, Simon Furman himself wrote a Regeneration 1, which basically I think the first issue in it is 80.5.
Wow.
So and I think it starts 20 years after that. I don't know if it was Simon Furman or it was the franchise itself, but starting with Transformers the movie, they kind of do a bunch of time jumps. And Simon Furman does a couple time jumps himself after that. Again, I don't know if they encouraged him or he just liked him. Maybe he's maybe he's a little both.
Yeah.
I mean. So I haven't read any of Regeneration 1, actually. I have read Generation 2, which he also wrote, which, I'd like to cover at some point. I'd almost like to cover it with you because you don't it seems like you like Transformers. You don't know a ton about it.
Yeah.
So this is a different spin, but it'll have more of your favorites in it. For me, I was disappointed. Who are your, I was disappointed because my 2 favorite Transformers are Jazz and Soundwave, and they're not in this. Who are your 2 favorites? Who's your favorite Autobot? Who's your favorite Decepticon?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I always like liked. So Soundwave's the one that was. Yeah, you're going to have to remind me here. Soundwave's the one that had the tapes, right?
Yeah.
I see the shirt. Yeah. Okay.
Honestly, I tell people this all the time. When it comes to the Transformers, everyone in the world can name like 3. They're like, okay, I know Optimus Prime, I know Starscream, and they may not know his name, but they're like, oh yeah, and the guy with the voice who's the radio. All that.
Yeah. Is Perceptor an Autobot?
Oh yeah.
I'm taking Perceptor. How's that? I remember he's the fucking in the microscope, right? Yeah. Okay, all right. So I remember that one and being like, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome." Bro. What's that?
I think he's a laser.
Oh, okay, all right, sweet. So I'll go.
He is a microscope and he's a scientist and he does scientist stuff. But then like when he's in robot mode, it's on his shoulder, like it shoots a laser. Thing. See, I know a lot about the Transformers. I could not get them, but I learned a lot about their lore. I've always been just really into them, and that's one of the things about Generation 2 I was telling you. Furman wrote it as well. It's sort of a continuation, and it's got all your favorites. That's probably the biggest letdown of this issue, is there's just so little of it that, like, yeah, if you were a Transformers fan and you casually picked it up and this was the last issue, there's not a ton here for you. And I mean, that's the nature of the beast. But and I'm not necessarily, it didn't bother me because I read it and I'd read, I'd read the fucking phone book if it had Grimlock's number in it. I don't give a shit. That would be a letdown, objectively. I can see how somebody would be like, I wish that, Starscream was in it or whoever.
Yeah. These characters, I'm sure, had plenty of time to grow. Obviously, I no Megatron in here. Well, obviously, There's probably a reason for that.
He's dead at this point, but he'll get better. And again, when they do Regeneration 1, a lot of your favorites are back because that's how we got off on that tangent. But yeah, Regeneration 1 at IDW, and just about everybody who was ever your favorite makes a reappearance. Shockwave, Ravage, Bumblebee, all the greats.
Yeah, see, what I would have liked to have seen, okay, if anything, we're talking about, it felt like it was a rushed ending. Of those extra pages of them going back to Cybertron would have been awesome. I mean, just going back.
Yeah, we need to see their paradise.
Yeah, and to see them react to it. So that's why I was asking if they picked up after this at some point. Cool.
They did pick up, but I think like in Regeneration 1 with the time jump, you never see the great. I don't think you ever see the Paradise Cybertron. And in Generation 2, which more or less follows this as well, but like later on it's retconned out. Like I don't think it happened now. Another thing you only really say about comic books, you're like that happened, but now it did.
It does not. Yeah, it never happened.
You also don't hear about like a Paradise Cybertron, and I'm not sure why. I'd have to go back and read about that. There may be like a time divergence or something.
So you gotta. I don't know if you have the comic there in front of you, but do you remember off the top of your head like your favorite panel? Is it the Optimus Prime?
It's got it almost certainly has to be the Optimus Prime panel. Because it's just, it's so grandiose, and it's a moment. Like, I remember reading this straight through. The first time I read Transformers number 1 through 80, and I read the Headmasters mini, and I read the G.I. Joe versus the Transformers mini, because, motherfucker, I'm a completionist. I'll read it all. Read it all, baby. When I read it for the first time, it was during the 2015 playoffs. And as everyone knows, I'm a huge Kansas City Royals fan. It was during the 2015 Major League Baseball playoffs. And so I believe I read the last issue like the day before I went to game 4 of the series. So it had a really big moment for me because it's like Optimus Prime is back, and I'm like, I'm going to the World Series tomorrow. So for me, it's hard for me to pick another panel because that just resonated with me so strongly. But honestly, when it comes to the art in this book, it's beautifully muddy. It really looks like a war, and that is, and I mean that in the highest compliment. It's really hard to make war look realistic sometimes, and it's especially hard to make techno-organic future space war look like this is real somehow, but they did a great job with this.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%, man, because I remember one of the biggest criticisms, me personally, of watching the freaking Michael Bay films, was like, I couldn't tell what was going on when the robots were fighting.
Right. Okay? Right. It's very clear here.
Yeah, you can easily tell it's done well. When an Autobot gets killed, it's horrifying, or any robot gets killed. Because I was just looking at Red Shirt Cup after they got out of the swamp getting shot, and he looks like he's getting shattered, and he looks like he is in horrifying pain. And the rest of the Autobots look shocked. This is a grimy, dirty book, but it's supposed to be that. I mean, this is in the middle of a war. So I agree 100%. Wildman did a great job, with the art here. I'm going to pick, I'll pick the panel. I'll be different, and I'll pick panel 3. I mean, second page when Getaway gets blown up, and I'm like, what just happened? Why did an Autobot just get killed? And when you look at that and you pick that apart, really all it is it's just an explosion of smoke. You can see the outline of what Getaway used to be, and then just barely make out his distorted, shocked face as it's exploding. That's what really made me pay attention to the book immediately. It was like, okay, we're not pulling punches. So
it also shows the character of these Decepticons, like we talked about. None of our favorites are there, and this breed of Decepticon, I guess third generation might be the best way to put it, because Megatron was the leader. Then it was always like some kind of other person from G1. It was Shockwave or Ratbat. Then it was Scorponok, who was a headmaster. Now it's Bludgeon. Like, these guys seem to be, and now that Megatron was like some fucking Cub Scout selling you popcorn outside the baseball game or whatever. But they didn't seem to be as ruthless as Bludgeon and Octopunch and these guys. Like, these guys seem to be very sadistic, and they enjoy that last moment of frenetic torture as much as they do anything else that they undertake in their lives.
Yeah, it was a good book, man. I mean, like I said, just being dropped into it, continuity issues aside from me just being confused, I had a fun time reading it.
And if G.I. Joe 155 had been chosen, that's a much easier read. Like, it's very, very, I don't know if you've ever read it, very, very straightforward. And when this got picked, I really hope that nobody who picked this is disappointed. Although, to be honest, you've been waiting on this since October 2019. You should be fucking glad you got it. But I hope nobody is disappointed that, there's no Starscream. There's no Megatron. There's no Shockwave. There's no Ratchet. There's, none of these. There's no Jazz. There's no Soundwave. None of these, big, other than, Optimus Prime and Grimlock. And Prowl, I guess, to an extent. I mean, I don't think Prowl's a big name, but it's at least an old school G1 name. But outside of Optimus Prime and Grimlock, there's no big names. There's nobody that, unless you were a diehard, you would just be hardcore excited to see. Me, always fucking stoked to see Octopunch. What a guy! That's a crazy idea. I love it. I just love it. I don't care how terrible of an idea it is. I don't care how bad it looks, because some people think it looks terrible. I agree, it looks terrible. It looks so terrible, it's amazing. I'm always here for Octopunch, but I understand that a lot of people aren't.
Yeah, I'm finding these that group that was hunting down the Autobots, and including Octopunch and Fangry. I wanted to kind of try to describe them to the listeners if I could find the. So Octopunch looks like a deep sea diver that has.
He's got squid arm.
He's got tentacles coming out his back. He's carrying a trident, and I mean, it defies explanation. Purple and yellow suit. It's pretty crazy.
He's great. Buy him if you can.
Who is the one with the bat wings and the wolf face? Is that going to be
Fangry?
Oh, that's Fangry. Oh, he does look Fangry. Pretty Fangry, actually. He looks really Fangry.
No, that's Fangry. Weird Wolf is like the yellow one that's on the ground.
I see it. Okay. And then we have over there the tank. That's got to be Quake then, right?
Yeah, Quake.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know much about him, to be honest. At this point, like I said, a lot of the first off, there were no Transformers toys on the shelves at this point. And the ones that had come out in 89 and 90 were mostly Micro Machine sized, and they either came out in they would come out in sets of 5. And I got a couple for Christmas, but again, the price point on Transformers was so high. A lot of the ones I wanted were $7 to $10. So the choice would be, you could get 2 or 3 G.I. Joes, you get a Transformer. I would get more G.I. Joes, but I kept up with those Transformers, baby. I kept up with the mythology. Yeah. I did everything I could. I would go into Walmart and I would read the backs, the file cards, and memorize them as best I could. I'm it's very important information. Someone might ask you about Warpath one day. Be ready.
Be ready for that.
Yeah.
So I was hopping on just to find our poll here real quick, and I wanted to see if anybody had any comments as to why they had, we were kind of following this really close. We had one day to ending. I see where you chimed in and said they were separated by 6%, and I got even closer. With as time went by.
This is a good poll.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see too many people explaining why they picked Transformers. I was just curious. It's like, if anybody would lay down why they decided to go with Transformers. I mean,
honestly, dude, it's like Democrats and Republicans are like two apples.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
You know, I mean, like it ended up 52-48. You put a Democrat and Republican in one in each hand, people are going to pick one 50% of the time. You put an apple in each hand, people are going to pick one. Unless one's got a giant worm coming out of it, people are just going to pick one 50% of the time. But I think that's really what it was.
Yeah.
You know, most people our age, especially fellas who were young men then, but of course some young ladies as well. I think you have fond memories of both, and you would just pick one. I think for most people, there's one they like decidedly more. That this was the direction they went. For me, it's almost a tie. Could have done either. I think I voted for the Transformers one. I think I like the Transformers a smidge better than G.I. Joe, but it's like the difference between like 100 and 100.02. Yep. I bet socioeconomically, the richer you were, the more likely you pick Transformers.
I bet you're correct. I knew one dude that had plenty of Transformers, and I knew how well off that family was. You know, they were doing decidedly better than we were.
Right. For me and you, I had like two, and then like my grandma sent me two of the MicroMaster sets in '89 for Christmas. So then I had like 10 total because I had like 8 that were tiny. And then I had these other 2.
Yeah.
And they weren't the big ones. They were the smaller price point as well, you know? Yep. So like that's the thing. You weren't going to get a lot of Transformers.
No, you were not. Well, I think it's been a fun discussion. I don't think there's anything else that I have to really talk about here.
I can talk about Transformers all night. That's the problem with me. Anybody who wants to talk about Generation 1 Transformers, I'm always here for it. And I think it's just really, really interesting to note that this is a 90s place, and obviously we love the 90s. The Transformers, I don't think anyone would deny decidedly of the 80s, as well as G.I. Joe, that we put against the Transformers issue here. But let's point out that their legacy extended to the 90s, that the original run, the original legacy of both of these great creations that I know that a lot of people continue to carry in their hearts and on their shelf, you know, myself included, lots of G.I. Joes, lots of Transformers. These things carried us into the 90s. And for the first era of these properties, as we know them, they ended in the early 90s. And it's exciting to be part of the Unspoken decade and to be a part of the first time that the curtain fell down on the Transformers.
Hey, quick pause before we get into plugs. Dean's going to discuss articles for the Unspoken Decade, and I felt this would be a great time to plug a sponsor of the W2M network, and that is Grammarly. For you, the listeners of Unspoken Issues, Grammarly is offering a free download of the Grammarly software. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2M network. Again, that's getgrammarly.com W2M network to download Grammarly for free. It's been, like you said, a pretty crazy year. We've got a lot of shows. I think this right here will be our 26th. We're definitely in the mid-20s here for the Unspoken Issues podcast. And we got plenty more planned. Tell them about the Unspoken Decade, as if they don't know already, but I want you to go ahead and tell them.
Well, unspokendecade.com, that's where we're at. I tell you what, I used to write a lot. I don't write very much anymore. I'm a lazy motherfucker over here. But Symbiefan, man, that dude churns it out. That dude is a fucking machine. So go see a lot of stuff he's written. I'm going to actually try and write something in the next month about Carl Kessel's first issue of Daredevil. He did a run on Daredevil right before Kevin Smith's run, which gets overlooked a lot. It's one of the few runs of Daredevil that would be critically acclaimed because it's fun. This was critically acclaimed at the time by Wizard, but it gets very overlooked. It's like a 15-issue run. I'm just going to focus on the first issue to see how he's setting that up. Of course, you can see that at the UnspokenDecade.com. Lots of other stuff going on there. We're on Twitter at Unspoken Decade. That's mostly just me posting pictures of comic books. Come over, say hi, post a picture back. You know, I'm always looking to talk to people. We're on Facebook, obviously, you know, at our Facebook page. Lots of pictures going on there, lots of discussion going on there nonstop. And we got some specific stuff coming up as far as Unspoken Issues goes. I'll toss it back to you for that. But, you know, we're trying to get some, you know, some more stuff going. And I do want to offer an invite. Anybody who's interested in writing for the Unspoken Decade at this time, if you think you have an article or two and you hit us up in the inbox, I'll be interested to take a look at it. We are looking for a couple new writers at this point.
The next episode that we plan to record, Chris Armstrong and I are going to get back together, and I think we're going to be discussing, right now, the poll is still alive. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Facebook polls are still there. We just have to kind of do them a different way. So we've got things set up for a group, the Unspoken Issues podcast group. It'll allow us to do polls over there. So the last episode was a duel between two Image X books. What we've decided to do is with this new poll, we took the remaining 4 and pitted them against each other to see which one would come out on top. And right now, by one singular vote, it's Wildcats 14, written and drawn by Eric Lawson.
Come on, man.
I voted for it too, man. It's sitting there. It's got 3 votes. It just needs one more, and maybe I can tell Chris Armstrong start inviting people. Go check out the Unspoken Issues podcast group. It's an open group, so just join up. But we want people to be able to participate in polls, and it makes it a little bit easier. Doesn't mean your valued opinion isn't going to go away. If we post something over on the Unspoken Decade Facebook page, and you got something to say about what you like, we're going to count your vote over there too. So don't worry about that. But either way,
try and vote for the official poll if you can. It just makes it easier on us so we're not having to count comments. As everyone knows, I do not know how to count, which means Jesse has to do it all.
So Wildcats 14 looks to be like what we're going to be discussing next time. And then we've got a few other things coming up at some point. So anyway, all right. Well, for me, if you like to follow me, I am at Stiznarky on Twitter. You're more than welcome to do so. Do some stuff on W2Mnetwork.com. You guys, we got to give them a shout out because, hey, they host the podcast and we appreciate that. I have a podcast over there called the Source Material Comics Podcast. I haven't been on it for a very long time. And my good buddy Mark Radulich is holding up the banner, and every week he's still putting out a Source Material Comics podcast, even though I have not been there. So I appreciate that greatly. But all other sorts of contributors as well. So I appreciate that. Dean Compton, well, I'm going to leave it to you, sir.
I'll tell you what, we really appreciate everybody taking a listen, having a look, reading the articles, looking at the pictures on the Facebook or the Twitter. You know, we're going to try and keep some good stuff coming for everybody out there. So just keep looking. Let us know what you want. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like, but be nice about it. Be nice. We'll certainly talk to y'all next time. For Jesse Starcher, this is Dean Compton. Have a great day, everybody.